Alright, so here I am splitting some more white oak. I split around $200 worth with an axe for what I sell it for, which is around 2 face cords of wood. And I split it in around, I think, 35-40 minutes or something like that, going at a casual pace. So my camera ended up dying on me here while I was splitting this. So, but it splits relatively easy. This stuff right here, it's not too bad. Now, if you ever split white oak, here in Kentucky, we've got 4 different types of white oak. Lots of people, they'll say red oak and white oak, and they'll kind of label it into one category. And I believe I know why, because there is a certain wood that's just called white oak, and then there is a wood that's called northern red oak. But there's also different species of white oak and different species of red oak. Black oak, shingle oak, northern red oak, and willow oak are all red oaks that we have here in Kentucky. We also have bur oak, chestnut oak, and chinkapin oak, which are all white oaks. And then we have one that's called white oak specifically. So there's 4 different species of white oak here in Kentucky, and I think there's 6 or 7 of red oak. I only named a few. I didn't name all of them. So there's lots of white oaks and lots of red oaks here in Kentucky, quite a few anyways. And there's lots of different species of hickory as well. The 2 that I know of here in Kentucky are shagbark hickory and some people call it pignut hickory, but online it labels it as bitternut hickory. So anyways, I'm kind of going to just talk through this splitting here. This is kind of how it is when I do it, just a casual splitting here. I actually hadn't been awake real long at this point. It's not real early in the morning there or nothing. I think I got up around 7:30, so I'm not really an early bird. So you can see the sun kind of been up for a little while back there. It was frost all over the leaves this morning too. And it was pretty cold, but I knew that once I started splitting that I would warm up. So I just left my jacket off and started splitting. And out here later on, my whole body is steaming just where my body got hot and it's so cold outside. But looked like there was a knot there. A lot of times, whenever a fish screw gets stuck, really the only time it gets stuck is because the wood is compressing it and because it's got a knot down inside of it. And you know, you've penetrated the wood and got far enough in there, but not split it, and then the knot's still holding it together, so it kind of compresses your axe head. That's really the only time that a fish screw gets stuck, really. It's from a knot compressing the wood. So here's the way that I split. Many people know it, but this is the reason why I don't use a chopping block, and the reason why I don't like a short-handled axe, and the reason why I don't use tires or bungees. You know, it's a completely different style of hand splitting, and when I first started really made my YouTube channel, I guess I didn't realize how uncommon that style of splitting is, and I understand why, because it can be very dangerous for sure. Just as anything else can be. Like a guy messaged me the other day or commented to me and was talking about how dangerous my swings were, and I kind of commented back to him and told him, commercial truck, a semi-truck is dangerous in the wrong hands. Electrical work is dangerous in the wrong hands. Construction work is dangerous in the wrong hands. Tree work is dangerous in the wrong hands. I didn't say all these things to him. I gave him a few different examples, which is the truth. In the wrong hands, all those things are dangerous, but people that are trained in these things and that have skill in them can be very productive in them. There's lots of dangerous jobs out there, and men have always had to do them. And there's times when you got to weigh the risk and whether it's worth it or not to you, and whether you feel like you're comfortable enough with your skills to do it safely enough to where you're going to be okay or not. That doesn't mean that it doesn't come without risk, but I feel completely safe hand splitting like this. I've done it for 6 years now. And now when it comes to chopping a tree down, I never have felt safe, honestly. I've chopped trees down a lot. I've had more close calls probably chopping one tree down before I felled that tree with an axe. I probably have more close calls in that one time than I have all the 6 years of hand splitting with an axe. But these Fiskars are great splitting axes. Thank you very much, Rick, for getting this one for me. I'm planning to use this one from now on for quite a while, and I'll tell you one reason why. Not only because it's a new one and I like it a lot, but also the other day. Something I did notice about it, I heard people mentioning shock with the Fiskars, and that's something I've never really felt with mine, the super splitting axe, the solid black one. But the other day I did the flick, and I felt shock when I did it. So I don't know if that's because the handles are a little bit different or what. I'm not sure. It may have just been the way that I hit. So I'm going to try to keep my close eye on that and study that in the future, because I definitely felt quite a bit of shock that I'm not familiar with feeling with the other one. So. But as I said, it may have been the way that I hit, but it's hard to believe that it was because I've hit that way so many times. So I plan to monitor that more in the future and see, if it is there is a difference in those handles. I don't know that there would be really a whole lot, honestly, because the color's different, but other than that, the material's the same. The only thing I think is maybe, the material that they use there with the orange is a little bit different. I'm not sure. But I do plan to monitor that, and I'll let you know the results of it. I'm supposed to be getting the Adler Super Splitter here soon, too, as well. So I'm looking forward to that. That's an axe that I have confidence in just by looking at the head of it. That design, it's very similar to the Fiskars. It's superior to traditional axes by far, and to Maul's. I truly believe, somebody mentioned in my comments the other day, and I agree with them completely, that Maul's are overrated entirely, in my opinion. Lots of times that weight just is not necessary, and then lots of Maul's don't have the greatest profiles. Their profiles, to me, are inferior to a good splitting axe like the Fiskars. I've said this quite a few times. You don't have to have a really sharp edge to split wood. I mean, matter of fact, I've mentioned this as well, that sometimes I've went as long as a year without even sharpening my Fiskars. But I do think the edge of the axe needs to come to a pretty thin point, your splitting axe. And that's something, it doesn't have to be sharp on the edge, but it needs to come to a pretty thin point so that it penetrates the wood. Because lots of Mauls are so blunt on the edge, like the Monster Maul for one. They're just so blunt and thick on the edge that they don't penetrate. And that is the first thing you've got to do to split wood, is penetrate it. Then once you get in, then the wedge does the rest of the work. And so I've noticed that Adler and some other companies they've got different styles of splitting axes. So I've not really used a lot of different splitting axes, honestly, that are specifically called splitting axes. I've used quite a few traditional axes and Mauls and Monster Mauls and stuff like that. But as far as actual splitting axes go, I've used now, two different Fiskars. Well, unless you classify the super splitting axe and the X27 as different axes, I believe they're probably the same except for the handle. And then the X25, I've now used that. But then there's also another one that I use. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but I noticed that Adler has a head very similar to it. And that head profile, I'm not a fan of. I don't like it very much, and I'll show it right here. So this is the design that I was speaking of. And now I have not used this specific axe with Adler, but I've used an axe that has a very similar profile to that, where they've got kind of almost like wings coming out in the middle of the axe head. And something I've found about them, the ones that are like that, the cheeks kind of bow in and then they come outwards. They don't kind of, go out at a consistent, steady angle like the Fiskars does. They kind of bow in and then go outwards. And what I've found with them is the one that I used anyways. I'm not saying that Adler, because it may be different. But the one that I used was stuck a lot more in the wood, way worse than the Fiskars. Fiskars doesn't hardly stick. That one would stick a lot in the wood. And I've even seen people using that same style of Adler splitting axe, and I noticed that it stuck quite a bit in the wood as they were splitting with it. But as I said, I can't speak to that axe with Adler because I haven't used theirs specifically. But now their Adler Super Splitter head, just by looking at it, I have confidence it would work. I'm literally, I feel like 95% positive it will be a fantastic splitter just because of that head design on it. It works so well. I've used many different variations of heads, and I know what works and what doesn't, and what works very well and what works decent and stuff. And that head that I just shown, I feel like it works pretty well, but not anything like the Fiskars design there. And some of the other ones, I'll show a picture of them now. So here's the Adler Super Splitter. This is the one I'm supposed to be sent soon from Adler, and I'm looking forward to testing it out. And notice how the cheeks on it are a straight line. They don't kind of curve in. Does this one look a little familiar to the Adler? This is a Helco, and from what I've read, the same company makes the head for these axes, so that's why it looks that way. Now, I noticed this the other day. Cobalt has came out with an axe, and it's nearly identical to the Fiskars X27. Look, even the handle has the same palm swell and everything. So the reason you see these other companies such as Cobalt and even Husqvarna kind of copying that design, as far as I know, Fiskars had it first. I'm not positive, but it's because it works. You see how that Husqvarna has a very similar head to the Fiskars. It's just a bigger, heavier head on a shorter handle, which is not what I prefer, honestly. I found that a 36-inch handle gives you much more momentum. Here's a Helco work, and it's got the same kind of design that I'm talking about, kind of similar to the Fiskars, a little bit of a different variation. Here's another Helco. It's got a little bit different variation. I don't like this design as much myself. You see how the cheeks on it kind of curve outwards. I like it going straight out, like this design here. On the Adler and the Helco and the Fiskars and all of those, they've got the cheeks go straight. They're a straight line. instead of a curve, as you see on some of them. Now, this is a different design as well. I haven't used anything like that, but just guessing by looking at it, I feel like that would stick worse and wouldn't split as well, to be honest with you. I don't feel like it's a good thing to have your wedge getting wider, farther up the head. I think it needs to be sooner, just like the Fiskars. I think it needs to be sharp, to penetrate at the edge. I'm not saying it has to be real sharp, but it needs to come to a point, the axe head. Then once it penetrates, I think the wedge needs to start working in a straight line, but not being too bulky. And I feel like the cheeks, flaring out, the wedge of the axe head in a straight line is much better. It's much superior to a curve such as this. Even though the splitting axe on the left looks like it would split pretty well, you notice how it's not a straight line and how the cheeks kind of curve outwards instead of going straight out. I don't like that design myself. I feel like it sticks a lot worse. And this is why I say they nailed it with this design, because as you see here, the Fiskars on the tip comes to a sharp point, but at the same time, the cheeks aren't too bulky, right past that point, and not too narrow either, and they go in a straight line, as they go outwards. I don't like that curve as it goes outwards. To me, as I said, from what I've found with axes like that kind of flare outwards in a curve, they stick worse from what I've found, a lot worse. But yeah, there's different preferences, with different splitting axes and stuff like that. But like I've said many times in the past, the Fiskars, it's the design that just works. And I think they're superior to just about any, if not all, traditional axe heads that you find. Just the design on them is made to split. That's what it does. And mauls to me are a little bit too thick on the ends. Honestly, they're a little too thick on the ends, so that they don't penetrate as easy, and then the weight just isn't necessary. They've got that big pole for smashing wedges, but if you're not going to be smashing wedges, that big pole isn't really necessary. It gives you some more weight. But some people, they'll make the argument, if you got more weight, it's easier to split. Yeah, if you're able to swing that weight. Some guys may grab it, and they have a hard time swinging an 8-pound maul. I can swing an 8-pound maul, no problem, but I can swing that 4.5 pound a lot heavier, and it's got a good profile on it, so I'm putting a whole lot of force behind that Fiskars, and that's why it splits like this. That's why I did, I'm able to on some of these rounds of white oak, split them in one hit, which isn't easy. I heard some people say it's pretty easy, but yeah, if wood is straight grain, it's definitely easy. But from what I found, white oak out of oak is much tougher than red oak. And as I said, we've got different species of red and white oak. So something I've found too with hand splitting, it's good for you mentally. And it's good for you physically. And I've done it in a different way than lots of people have. And I've learned that the more that I've been on YouTube. It didn't really seem like a strange thing to me before, but as people kept telling me on YouTube and other sites as well, because I was on this site called the Firewood Hoarders Club, talking to some people on there when I first started my YouTube channel. And they were all telling me, man, you're going to have to get a log splitter. You need to get a log splitter. And I was thinking, man, these guys are giving me such a hard time about it. And then I seen some guys, with like $10,000 log splitters, and I was splitting more wood than them, in the amount of time that they were doing it. I was splitting a 4-quarter wood in almost half the time that they were with a $10,000 log splitter. So I was thinking, I guess it's just not common to them, this style of splitting, for one. It's not something I'm trying to promote as far as like telling people to do it. I have done that in the past. I'm not going to do it anymore because I know that lots of people probably aren't comfortable doing that, and I don't want to be responsible for somebody getting hurt or killed even. But it's something I'm very comfortable with. So if you aren't comfortable, it's something that you should avoid, But yeah, I've done it like this for 6 years now. My first year, I pretty much started out like this, As I've mentioned many times before, I found this style online of splitting, and then I went out and put it to work for myself, and I just seen huge results from it as far as production goes and efficiency. I was able to split a lot of wood with a good axe, in a short amount of time and make some pretty decent money like that. So that's the whole reason that I split the way that I do. And I know that I've explained that many times, but I still get lots of comments about it. So as far as splitting goes, never got myself bad with an axe in the past 6 years of splitting like this. Now with chopping a tree down, I have, of course, some of you know that, but I've had more close calls with chopping a tree in one session, probably one tree, than I have the whole 6 years I've been splitting with an axe. So just chopping a tree down to me is about the most dangerous thing you can do, that position, because it gives that axe a sure path to your legs or even your head. So it's just so much more dangerous. But this style of splitting is different. But something about this style of splitting, I don't think you'll find a style. I've had lots of guys tell me, you need to use a tire and quit chasing the wood. You need to use a chopping block. You're losing force on the ground. You need to get a real axe. That's not heavy enough. Use them all. So much advice, but I've never, ever, never, not once, had somebody that will send me an example and show me, give me an explanation of what they're doing. And the thing is, it takes about the same amount of time to record a short as it does to comment that comment probably. So that's, as I said, they're witnesses against themselves. I'm not trying to be mean, but if you want to prove something, show me, show me. Because I'm very willing to compare with people. I already know what works. I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything like that, but I've done it for years to make money, to make a living in the winter. I've done it for years to do that, and I know what works. So when I'm not worried about, a pretty axe or keeping my axe pretty. Of course, I want to take care of my stuff. I'm not saying that. But what I'm worried about is producing a lot of wood in a short amount of time. And this style right here of setting your wood on edge on the ground, and then splitting it, with a good splitting axe, something that you can maneuver good from angles, as you see me doing here, so you don't have to constantly bend over and pick your wood up. Or if you've got a chopping block, you you split it in half, and then it's falling off. You're picking them pieces back up. But that's all time you're losing. It may not seem like a lot of time, but if you've got, some of these bigger loads I do, you're talking about 40, 50 rounds of wood that you got to split to fill them loads up sometimes. So imagine those 40 and 50 rounds, for one thing, putting them on a chopping block, then splitting them in pieces, and those pieces falling off, picking them pieces back up and putting them on a chopping block, and then just the time that it would take to do all that, or even putting them all in a tire, it just doesn't make sense to me for the style that I split. This right here, that's why I don't move my wood either. I've seen guys move their wood, and I understand they're getting it out of the way, but I've done it like this for 6 years. I don't move my wood even. Everything I do, it's about saving time and saving energy. It's the most efficient. I believe, I'll tell you the truth right now, from my own experience. And lots of guys I've noticed on YouTube will speak out of no experience. And they'll just say things, in a hateful way, and they have no experience. Some of them I've seen do the same thing with the fisher's axe. They'll talk so bad about it, and they don't even have experience with it. So that, to me, that doesn't really carry any value, that type of opinion. But based on my own experience, I don't think there's any way of splitting wood by hand that's more efficient than this right here. And which is what I call freestyle. And I'm not the only one that does it. There's very few that do it. But I'm not the only one that does it. And yes, it is dangerous. It is, especially if you're not extremely comfortable. But I've been doing it for the last 6 years, and I've never got myself bad with an axe the whole time I've done it. I've nicked myself once from splitting. I've mentioned this before, one round, and the axe continuing through and bouncing off another round and coming through the side of my boot. And which was something that I learned from, But so I'm extremely comfortable doing this. Now, not everybody would be, so I'm not trying to recommend that everybody do this, but there's a reason that I do. It's because I'm trying to make money. This took about 35, 40 minutes to split $200 worth of wood. And as you can see, I'm not pushing a real hard pace, but I'm being consistent, which is big with hand splitting. And of course, you don't want to go too slow either. I can kind of know how long it's going to take me sometimes if I've got people to deliver to and stuff. I kind of can push a pace to get it done in a certain amount of time after doing it for so many years and so many times. There's no telling, and I'm not saying it bragging away, how many times, thousands upon thousands of swings I've swung with an axe, and I'm not the only one. Lots of men are. And something I found from that, when you have that type of experience, it's a different type of experience than somebody that's just doing it as a hobby. It's a total different experience. I've done commercial lawn care before, and I had done lawn care before that. But when I got that commercial experience, it put me on a different level of lawn care. Like with weeding, I was on a completely different level. I thought I could weed eat decent before that. After I worked with those guys for about around a year doing it commercially, I could have ran circles around myself before, literally. When you get a different experience like that, it kind of sets you apart, honestly. As far as your comfort level and stuff goes, and your skill level as well. So the experience goes a long ways. Another thing I've noticed from hand splitting firewood is the strength gains that you get from it. I used to lift weights when I was in high school. I got into football I never did understand football, never liked it. I still don't understand or like it. I know lots of people may be offended in that, but I just don't. I'm not big into like throwing balls around, period, anything. I'll play them, but as far as like watching that stuff, never was into that stuff at all. But I did like weightlifting, and so my dad had a bench at home, and I just started when I was probably around 15 lifting weights. I weighed 126 pounds my freshman year of high school. And I joined the football team to get into weightlifting. And because my principal recommended it, he thought it would be good for me, he said. So anyways, the coach in there told me, he called me Rogers, because that's my last name. He said, you think that you can get to 130 pounds in a month? Because he was wanting, the players to get bigger and stuff. I was probably one of the smallest guys there. And I said, yeah, I think I can do that. Ended up getting to 133, I think, in that month, and eating a lot of peanut butter sandwiches. And then that same year, I ended up gaining to 160 pounds. And I went from bench pressing 160 pounds to bench pressing 200 pounds that year, if I'm not mistaken. My sophomore year, the very next year, I got up to 170 pounds, stayed around 170 for quite a while after that, and was bench pressing 275 pounds. So a significant gain. And the point I'm making with this isn't trying to brag or anything like that, but I'm trying to say the gains that I've got from hand splitting, just hand splitting firewood, have been significant strength gains. And how I know that is because, I lifted weights up until my early 20s, maybe around 22. Right now I'm 32. And I did it on and off years after that, but then there was years that went by that I didn't touch weights. I was at a friend's one day, around 3 years ago, this is when this happened, and he had a bench and with a lot of weight. He had 325 pounds altogether. And anyways, we were talking about trying to see what we could get again, because we used to lift, together a lot as teenagers. And I told him, I said, I probably can't even get 250 anymore. I said, because I haven't lifted in years. And so that's what I went for at first, was 250. And to my surprise, I got it easily, which I was much bigger at this point. I was 250 pounds, compared to 170 pounds. But no weightlifting, or very little at least, and it had been years probably that I even touched weights. And so once I got that 250, I moved up to 275, which was my max, when I lifted weights every day as a teenager. And 275 I got easily. So I ended up doing all the weights that he had, eventually 325, and got that without getting stuck. And which surprised me significantly, because, like I said, I hadn't lifted weights. And then we ended up squatting. I never was very good at squatting. My legs were way weak. Actually, I think I bench pressed more than I squat back then. I would squat 225 pounds and my legs would shake. Well, I put 315 pounds on my shoulders there at his house and did it 15 times, which surprised me significantly. Because as I said, legs was never a strong point for me. And the only thing I can contribute that to is, for one, yes, I've gotten much bigger, but bigger doesn't always mean stronger. You can gain a lot of weight and be weaker. But the only thing I can contribute to is hand splitting. Because for, the past 6 years, I've done it on a big level in the winter. All winter long, many winters, to make a living, to make money, to pay bills with and stuff. And so it's different than a lot of people, it's a different kind of experience. I'm not saying that in a bragging way, but I didn't realize how strange it was to a lot of people until I got on social media and everybody kept telling me to get a splitter, and then like I kind of told those guys on there, and I even made a video of it. One guy had a $10,000 log splitter, and I think it took him 2 hours to split a full cord of wood. And I was splitting I could split a full cord of wood, and made a video and showed it in just over an hour and 15 minutes, something like that. Now, that was pushing a very hard pace that I wouldn't want to push consistently. But I can split a full cord of wood, hand splitting, definitely within 2 hours. This right here, actually, what I delivered here was around 2 face cords, maybe a little less. Because there's about 3 more rounds or 4 that I split to add to this load. But my camera died, so you don't see that. My phone died. And I split about 3 more loads and then took this load on. And it came out to around 2 face cords. Well, it took around 35, 40 minutes to split that at this pace that I'm pushing here, which isn't very fast, but it's pretty consistent. And, I'm splitting from angles. And so that's why I don't use a tire, Lots of guys have told me to use tires and use bungees and use this and use that, use a chopping block, because you're losing force in the ground and all this stuff. But I don't think there's any method of hand splitting that you can find that will work better than this right here, at least for me. I'm saying for me, than this right here. That will be more efficient. to where I could split, as much firewood as I can like this in this amount of time. Let me split like this for an hour. I don't think there's any other method I could do for an hour and split as much firewood as I could doing this. Because I'm splitting from angles, I'm not moving the wood. I know some guys move their wood. I've never done that. I think at the very beginning I did, and I realized I was wasting my time, so I quit doing that. And right at the first year. And I realized it was wasting so much time and energy. And these little things may not seem like much, like picking a round of wood up and putting it on a chopping block may not seem like much. But you got to think, when I'm doing these bigger loads of wood, like the 2 face cords of wood, sometimes it takes, 30 to 50 rounds, depending on how big the rounds are, to fill those loads. So imagine picking up all of those rounds and putting them on a chopping block, and then when you split them in half, they're falling down off the chopping block, and you have to pick them up again. I don't have to do that at all like this. I put them all on in one time. Every now and then I'll pick them up again if I feel like it's worth it. Like right there, you see I picked that piece up. But a lot of the times I'll hit them from angles. I'll hit it on the ground the way that it is. I try to save as much time and as energy as I can, because when you're doing it for a living, that counts a lot. I've delivered around 3 full cords in a day before, which is the most I've ever done, which is around 9 truck beds. Now, that's give or take. I had a 5x10 utility trailer with rails on it. I built rails up on it. So it was about 3 foot deep and 5 foot wide, 10 feet long, and that was loosely thrown in. And I was calling that a cord delivery. So I did whatever that came to. It was around 3 full cords. I delivered 3 of those in a day. Hand split and delivered, from what I remember. And every time I deliver it to him, the man would count me out $200. That's why I sold a full cord for back then. Now I sell for $300. But the way that I split is why I was able to do that, and the way that I stay consistent. A lot of it's mental too. A strong mentality can build a strong physicality as well. So if you're strong mentally, you can push your body and make it stronger physically. And you can push too far sometimes, but at the same time, sometimes pushing past that tired point and going on is what increases that cardio and strength like that. I'm carrying a lot of weight right now at my height. I'm carrying, I don't move as good as I did, at 220 pounds, even 250 pounds. Right now, the other day I was 282 pounds when I weighed. Now I think I'm 276, and that's why I'm dieting again to try to get down, and my goal is 240. So when you're packing that much weight, it's definitely everything you do is more effort. So it's just not good for a working man to have that much weight, really. It's not to your benefit. It's against you, and I know that. But I still push myself. Even it's just harder to do. It takes more energy to do so than it did before, without a doubt. Before I could go longer without stopping, and I just move better, everything, So that's my goal, is to get to around 240. But yeah, as I said, I know that's a very unique style of splitting. I'm not the only one that does it by no means. Like I said, I kind of call it freestyle. Maybe other people have even called it that before. I don't know. But that's kind of just makes sense for it, because that's what it is. You're swinging from angles. You've got nothing to hold you down, really. You've got no limits. So you've not got to worry about putting it on chopping blocks. You're not got to worry about me, the way I do it. You don't got to worry about moving the wood even until you're done. As I said, I used to do that, and then I seen how much time it was consuming. And I decided, okay, I'm just going to split it and move the wood once. I'm going to buck the wood, stand it on end, split it, and then load it, and then deliver it. And doing it like that, you can split a lot of wood in a day and deliver a lot of wood in a day. Stack a lot of wood in a day, whatever you want to do with it. But you can produce a lot of firewood in a day. And I'm wanting to in the future, especially now that I got this location where I can go and pick these rounds up already cut like that. I'm really wanting to make a video of aiming for 5 full cords in a day, which I know would be hard. So I'm going to try to get down in weight before I even attempt that, maybe 240 pounds, and do it when it's cool weather. I don't want to try that in the summer. But I'm guessing, I'm not sure how many rounds that would be. It'd probably be 200 or 300 rounds of wood at least, maybe more for 5 cords of wood. So that's a lot of wood in a day. But that's my goal. I just want to try to aim for that later. Because something I want to prove to people too is that you can split a lot of wood with an axe. You don't have to have a log splitter, even if you're doing it for a business. Of course, some of these newer log splitters and stuff, you can't really compete with them by hand. But there's some $10,000 log splitters that I can outsplit. But now some of these newer ones and stuff, yeah, you can't really compete with them. But I don't want them though. I would not. Honestly, I wouldn't want one, because it ain't just about how fast you split either. It's about getting these rounds onto your splitters as well, Getting these rounds onto your splitter and getting them to your splitter and all that stuff. You know, me, I buck it where it's at, split it, and load it. It's a lot easier to split or to load split wood than it is to load big heavy rounds. I don't like loading these big heavy rounds like you've seen me doing here lately. I hate that. I've been doing that because I've had to, you know, because they won't let you split it, and that's why in the future I intend to get a trailer so I can roll them up the ramp, because a trailer is much lower to the ground than a truck bed, and you can just kind of roll them right up the gate on the trailer, so it'll make that much easier. But normally that's what I do. It's as I said, it's a lot easier to load split firewood than it is to load, you know, 50 to 100 pound rounds of oak or whatever type of wood you're loading, you know. But yeah, I think my camera dies here in a little bit. I don't get every bit of this recorded. I think there's like 2 or 3 rounds left when it dies. But then even after that, I had to go and split around 3 or 4 more rounds because I had some more over here behind me in the video to make this a full load. So that shows you it takes a lot. Because I think right there in this section here, I had 31, 32 rounds of wood. And those didn't even make a full load for the 2 face cord load that I deliver. So I had to go get a little bit more and add to it. And as I said, it took around 35, 40 minutes around that, give or take. Not pushing a real hard pace or nothing like that, but staying pretty consistent, you know. Staying pretty consistent. You can make decent money like that, you can. But anyways, I'm getting pretty tired. This is like the 4th time I've recorded the audio because my phone keeps doing something and I've had to record like 20 minutes of audio again and again. I know sometimes I can ramble on and on too and maybe get off subject and everything, but what I was talking about with the weightlifting and stuff like that, just how much it surprised me that the increase in strength, you know, that I got from hand splitting firewood, it somehow carried over to bench pressing and squatting and all that. So just working with firewood, it's a full body workout. Like I said, you know, it works your whole body, and those gains that I got from the weightlifting really proved that to me. And of course, as I said, my size too, but size doesn't always give you strength just because you get bigger. But anyways, I wish you all the best. As I said, I'm getting pretty tired. I'm looking forward to getting that Adler here soon. I'm really looking forward to that axe. I think it'll be a good one. I don't know that I'll like it better than the Fisher. I'll go on and tell you, if I had to guess, I don't know. Probably for the style that I split, I probably won't like it better, honestly. I could be wrong. But for the style that I split, swinging from angles, that 36-inch handle, you know, compared to a 32, and then a head that's heavier, you know, I just don't know that I like it better, but I'm looking forward to trying it either way. I think it will be better in certain applications for like splitting bigger rounds, you know, tougher rounds. I think it will split better with that extra weight, and just, you know, the design that it has is very good as well. But do I think I'll like it better than fish? Because I don't have a lot of confidence that I will, honestly. But anyways, I guess I'll go on and let you all off here. Or I'll go ahead and get off here anyways. You see, I'm so tired. I'm kind of talking goofy now. But stayed up late again editing this video. But here, anyways, the rest of the video is just us kind of loading it. And then I think there may be some footage of us taking it on as well. And this white oak is stringy stuff. I mean, white oak is so much stringier than red oak in my experience. And as I said, I know there's different species of red and white. But from what I found, white oak tends to be a lot just tougher and stringier. You can see here, too, how Carter kind of stacks this wood. He kind of like makes a headache rack where I don't have one. That's how we do it. We kind of stack up one stack right there behind the windshield and then just throw the rest of the wood in there loose. And that protects your window. But here soon I do plan to make a video, and I've been planning to for a while, on making a whole new set of rails with a headache rack. Because I'll be keeping that on for the winter, Lord willing, anyway. So I plan to just go ahead and do a video on it and take the time to make a good one. I kind of just threw that one together with some stuff I had laying around and some boards that I milled, or freehand milled, you know, from some pines at my neighbor's. But anyways, I don't know if I show us fill it in more, but we fill it in all the way. I believe I have the footage of there we go. See, now it's filled in. And then we took it on. But that's a good amount of wood. And as I said, that was split in around 35, 40 minutes. And I took that and sold it for $210 actually, because I charged $10 for gas. So it was a decent drive away. My truck's not too bad on gas, but so I charged $210 for that with an axe, you know. I appreciate all your all's kind comments and everything. Thank you again, Rick, for our axes. We truly appreciate them. Me and Carter both. You all be safe out there. Stay warm, and God bless.